Yes, thank you so much for doing this for me. It's in line with International Women's Day next week. I'm speaking to finance professionals that are, of course, ladies, to just get a feel for their experiences on their career to date. So really keen to hear, and I guess a great place to start is tell me a bit about your journey in finance. I know you had your own business, which is incredibly exciting, which I can't wait to hear about again, and just where you're at now. So yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, I became a member of ACCA when back in 2000, and at the time I was working for a subsidiary of Royal Bank, so RBS. Yeah. After I qualified, I then moved to Barclays up in the city. So I had a super time. I managed a small team of professional accountants, and we reported all of the multi-currency transactions from Treasury. So really great job. After a while, you know, I was there. We got involved in a lot of projects, a lot of things that were coming back onto the system from offshore islands. So huge opportunity to get involved in a lot of the things that were going on within Treasury. Yeah. But then as the years went on, my age, I was getting a bit older, and I wanted to start a family. So I had my first child in 2008, and a couple of things happened. I realised that I didn't want to continue with the commute to Canary Wharf. I'd waited so long to have my child that I wanted to be close to her. Mm-hmm. But I equally needed something to do. I equally needed something to keep my brain going. You know, I'd been incredibly busy in a very demanding role, which I enjoyed, which, you know, I really enjoyed. Yeah. And I didn't want to give that up. So I think in life, it's everything. It's finding the balance. So I needed to find a balance where I could be near my daughter, but I needed to be able to think. And a couple of things happened. You know, that was 2008, and everybody is aware of the financial crisis that was going on at the time. And one of the headlines that I'd seen on I don't know whether it was on Google or a newspaper, but I'd seen a headline that said, despite the financial crisis, sale of chocolate around the world was growing. And that planted a seed. And I've always loved chocolate, you know, predominantly eating it. Yeah. And I thought, chocolate. And another thing happened, very, very similar time. I bought myself a box of chocolates. The packaging was beautiful. That's what attracted me to it. And I tasted them, and sadly the taste just wasn't there. And again, I don't know what made me think, but I thought I can do better. I can do this. How you jump from accountancy to chocolate, I'm not really sure, but I did. I made that leap of faith. And with the help of the internet, which is amazing, I managed to find a company that would show me how to make chocolate, how to work with it. I don't know whether you've ever watched Bake Off, but those people have such a nightmare with chocolates. It's not the easiest of products. So I started to learn about chocolate. I realised that it was something that I could do from home. You know, my aim through all of this was to do something to keep me busy, but to allow me to be at home. And I've often thought, you know, you jump from accountancy to chocolate, but actually it was accountancy to running a business. Yes. The fact that the chocolate was the product, it was the running the business, it was managing the finances, it was investing, it was marketing, it was running the website. It was, you know, at the end of the day, the business had to make a profit. Yes. So I set up this business back in 2009-ish. And it ran for 9 years, and you know, in the end it was such a huge achievement because I set up from nothing. I didn't have a product, I didn't know what we were going to do. I just knew it was chocolate, but I didn't know what shape the chocolate was going to take. And what I ended up doing, or what we established at the very beginning, was that I would host events. And again, I think I've got Barclays to thank for that, because we often stood up and we used to do training across the floor, you know, to different people and explain what we were doing. And I think that forced me to be able to stand up and talk to people. So with the chocolate, I used to train people, bizarrely, to make chocolate. So people would come to me knowing nothing about chocolate, and at the end of an event, they would take home the chocolates they'd made, whether it be boxed chocolates or Easter eggs or, you know, all different things. And we hosted hen parties, corporate events, children's events. We did rehab events in hospitals. We went into schools. So whole host of, I mean, ultimately chocolate covers all occasions.
Yes.
So I did that, and I did that for about 9 years. But again, you know, it was the business, I loved the business element. I loved the meeting the people, and that was fantastic, but I couldn't have done it without my accountancy training. That allowed me to, you know, to look at the numbers as well. You know, I'd come back from hosting chocolate parties on a weekend, and then of course you're back into the accounting, you're back into where do we think we're going to be, and how do we grow, what new products can we bring in. So there was all of that as part of running the business. And then I've kind of skimmed over it, but I then went on and had another 2 children in that time. So maybe it kind of fitted in with the chocolate making. As my children grew and decided to head off, you know, they went off to school, and I decided that, you know, again, the chocolate making, the business, despite it being fantastic, was there to allow me this balance, this balance in my life. And I always knew that I wanted to gain as much from it as I possibly could, but my aim all along was to return to accounting. And that kind of brings me back on the loop. So that's where I am now. My youngest is at school, and I'm throwing myself back into accountancy. And whilst I'm aware that I've been away from core accounting for a while, what I decided to do is to take on as much training as possible to bring myself back up to speed, and that's where I am now, because I'm currently doing an MSc in professional accountancy. I love a bit of learning. And it's really relevant, new topics. So that's great.
Fantastic. And I love that story. I think it's so inspirational on so many levels for working mums or mums that are looking to return to work, just having that idea and then it being a successful business that you were then able to sell after 9 successful years. I mean, there's not many SMEs that last past 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, that's a massive achievement, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks, Katie.
In terms of, I was going to ask you about major wins, but I mean, that's just a whole major win, massive win in its own right. And not forgetting, obviously, having your 3 children during that time, because I think when we originally spoke, you were talking about, obviously, a lot of the events you were needing to do at the weekend, because during the week you were, obviously, the child, looking after your children, whilst your husband was working, and you had to be that person, but then you were still going out there and doing your thing at the weekends and making a very successful business.
Absolutely. I mean, the weekend predominantly was when the business ran. You know, during the week is when I would do all of my preparation and accounting and, you know, the back office stuff and the marketing. And then the weekend is when we would regularly host up to 6 events every weekend. And it was solid. And I think, again, so that probably explains, you know, again, why I wanted to then step away from that, despite it being brilliant. As my children grew, they didn't need me at home Monday to Friday anymore when they were at school, but I needed to be at home. I think life is, you know, life changes. You go through stages in life and you need to adapt to where you are at that time. And I've now got the luxury that my children, I mean, they very much need me, but I've got that luxury that I can step away and I can refocus on my career. And you know, they're not little anymore. They don't need me to feed them and to do all the basic needs.
Fantastic. And I mean, obviously, we're talking about women in finance, and don't get me wrong, somebody I've spoken to, there is no right or wrong answer with this. I asked somebody else, you know, did they feel that being a woman had affected their career? And their answer was no. So it's not I guess some people naturally would assume that the answer to that would be, oh, yes, I was dramatically affected by it and I found it really hard. But I mean, everybody has a different perspective on that. But how did you find it? Perhaps whether it's when you had your own business or when you were in the corporate world, in Canary Wharf, did you feel a disadvantage being a woman?
Never, absolutely never, Katie, hand on heart. I never did. I mean, I think, I've always worked in environments where there's been a high demand in terms of demand, the work level that's demanded from the individual. But I've never ever seen a difference between male and female. I've never ever felt at a disadvantage. No, never. I think it's hard for women. I think the turmoil comes from within. When it comes to loyalty or guilt or whatever you want to call it, when you're having a family, and at which point do I allow the time for me as opposed to the time for my children? That's my experience, but certainly never in terms of male female roles. No.
Fabulous. And just lastly, in terms of, obviously the last year has been very up and down. It's affected people in different ways, more severely than others, but I've also seen opportunities be created from that. I mean, in terms of the future, and either it holds for you or just generally view, I mean, what would your thoughts be just in terms of the future post-COVID?
Well, I'm actually really excited about the future post-COVID. I think we all need a bit of light, a glimmer of hope. But I think there are so many things, and I actually think in accountancy, for me personally, I want to achieve my MSc, and I'd like to be able to, take that and go forward. But I think in terms of accountancy, there are so many things to do with the world and the shape of the world. I know that, alongside the IFRSs at the moment, they're looking at bringing out sustainability reporting, very much taking a view on climate, which is huge. And I think for accountants, that broadens the scope.
Yes.
When you're looking at sustainability and how to tackle climate and corporate social responsibility. And I think, in an office environment, there is a much bigger scope for people in finance to get involved in the strategy of the business. So I think that is incredibly exciting, and I would hope to be a part of that going forward.
Yeah, accountancy and finance actually touches so many different things. And I mean, if you had time again, last question, I promise, Sarah, would you choose accountancy as your profession?
Do you know what? I absolutely would, because I can't say I loved accountancy when I very first started a long time ago. I wouldn't have been able to run my business without it. I wouldn't be where I am without it. And I think it just gives you such an outlook on life that, I think we get a lot of stick for being a bit dull, but I actually think it's a fantastic profession.
Fantastic. Well, it's certainly done me well over the last 20 years working with you all. So it's dedefinitely good. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sarah, for doing this. I can let you escape now. But I'll just put an end to the recording. Thank you.
Thank you.